Yeah, never was any moment where they had enough space to try and get that composition off the ground. Let's see what adjustments they make in game number 2, though. Those picks and bans already in Benedicts Cvlry now with their backs up against the walls. If there was a place where it looked like they can get a win, this was it, right, Tully? This is the other 0-2 team. This is where they were going to have to try and get their momentum going. Now it looks like, unfortunately, they might even drop here. Big Money looked dominant.
It's possible. Well, Cavalry coming into this second game with the second pick. So they have an idea what they want to ban away. And this time it's actually Big Money that's going to ban away the Giannis. A little surprising to see this, where both teams on first pick are banning the Giannis.
That's right. Something about this Giannis, man, it scared both these two teams, and they're getting that banned away. The Ao Kuang banned out as well, the Freya too. I'm wondering where we'll see this Bakasura get valued, because remember last game, Snadows built it full damage, right? It wasn't even a solo lane Bakasura. It felt like he was just a jungler over in solo.
The only defensive item he had, which was a hybrid item, was the Berserker Shield. He went for the Heisei Katana,
right.
but he went for the Heisei Katana after the Golden Blade. You need Golden Blade for laning presence clear, and there was just no hope for the Guan Yu once the Heisei Katana was online in terms of keeping up with the rotations.
So let's see if that's going to be the call here from Snadows to do something equally aggressive this time for Big Money, and it might be this Achilles. We'll see where this ends up going. I think this was Perez who had this last game on Benedicts Cvlry, so this one's now been taken away by Big Money. Now, that does mean that Bacchus and Kernanos, perhaps two of the best duo laners right now, those are both going to be going over to Cavalry.
I'm surprised that they went for the Kernanos over the Shibalanke. When you have Bacchus already for the Intoxicate, that synergy between being dazed and then having to stutter step to avoid the stun is inevitable. You will get stunned if you're intoxicated, unless you beat it, of course. And if you're beating the daze effect of Intoxicate, well, you're not going to be able to beat another form of CC instead.
That's right. It could potentially make you vulnerable further down the line, and they can force your hand in that regard, as now the Ardio and the Hachiman coming out. So if those two get paired up, a decent duo lane in their own right, though maybe not online quite as quickly as that Bacchus and that Kernanos, and now a Hera to pair it with as well for Benedicts Cvlry.
I don't think Cavalry is deterred from picking up the Hera this time around. I think that they have ideas about banning certain mid-mages. Probably going to take away the Agni, which they do.
Exactly, yeah.
And maybe another long-range god that they don't want to deal with. Maybe the Nox is my next guess.
Yeah, to try and make sure there's still plenty of options for this Hera as Susano gets banned away too. I like this idea. Some of these gods that can cause problems for Hera, who is low mobility. She relies a lot on her shield and on Argus to appeal for herself, so you don't want gods like Susano causing a problem. But think about it, Bakasura is still out there. That could certainly still end up getting picked in this game. So could Pele. So they haven't gotten rid of some of the stuff that we know that Big Money like to play.
It's a possibility. As Poseidon gets stripped
there
away
is by Big Money themselves.
There's going to be plenty of assassins that they can go for still to this day. Like the fact that Big Money things went for the Pele and the Bakasura, they could swap that between jungle and solo lane. Like Pele can even play in the solo lane, so they still have plenty of options of where they want to go.
Well, it's Osiris that comes in for Benedicts Cvlry in that slot. So they might still need their jungler, though Osiris can flex there a little bit. We'll see what it is that they choose to go with their final slot. But it's Da Ji, another aggressive pick in the jungle. Remember, this was Pele last time for Big Money. Da Ji could be just as annoying.
Yes, Achilles will be playing in the solo lane, more than likely, unless they're going to swap it in the support role. Unlikely, though. But this aggressive jungler is just going to be enabled even further if they got the damage numbers to benefit from that Discordia passive.
That's right, as Discordia now locks in. And so what Tully's alluding to is that if you're leading in damage on your team, you'll be doing even more damage thanks to Discordia's passive. It can be very strong in early game if you're looking for some level 1 fights, and you can group up a little bit of extra bonus damage that Benedicts Cvlry truly won't be able to match, as they lock in Thor, kind of an old school pick.
I like it.
That we don't see as much of.
I'm never mad when I see Thor locked in. Whenever I see Osiris and Thor, I think back to the Season 1 days where like Omega and Anister are playing together, like this is their bread and butter.
Combo.
Oh yeah, and you need global pressure, I think, in Smite. So when you don't see Ratatoskr, Thor, Thanatos, gods like this, I'm always like, maybe you should pick them up from time to time.
So we should be expecting some nice rotations then from Perez if it is indeed that Thor is going to be going to him. But it's time now for Game 2. It's time to get this one on over to the casters. Benedicts Cvlry up against Big Money with their back against the wall.
Benedicts Cvlry certainly looking to bounce back after a rough Game 1, to say the least. But this time I think they're a little bit more well-equipped to defend on these invades. Instead of the lower pressure Erlong Kronos lane, instead they've got Bacchus Kernanos, which is a premier lane, I think, right now.
Definitely. Bacchus and Kernanos shouldn't have too many difficulties in terms of pushing back against the pressure that I think Hachiman Ardio also provides for Big Money eSports. But Game 1 for Benedicts Cvlry, that's just one of those matches where you're just like, God bless that this is a best-of-3 series, because that was definitely some rough stuff.
Look at speed. Snadows, sorry to cut you off, is here, but SmiteVOD still goes the way of Daniel Perez. Snadows now got to teleport towards the right-hand side. I think that was enabled because Sternhawk sat in base for a little bit and just got his cooldown boots right off the bat, and so wasn't really there to help out on that speed buff start. Same thing for Nano. This cooldown boots start, you start in base with 1500 gold, you wait until minions spawn, and you accumulate that 50 gold by way of your passive gold gain. I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it's worth you miss out on hitting level 2 really early on with this start, and you've got absolutely no sustain.
Not really my side of the woods either, but that is the type of... That's exactly what Big Money Esports are looking for with Hachiman, RDO. I don't even think Mystic Salmon had time to look for the dash away there with the Kernanos. We saw the beads get popped, but it was just so much damage applied at once, and the IE Jitsu kind of just sealed the deal there. Discordia
passive, man, it makes a big difference in those early laning fights. Doesn't seem like a big number, and it isn't, but having any sort of advantage like that ends up costing you in the end if you're up against it, as Shaolin and Snadows both pretty low on this right-hand side.
I do want to take things back, though, to this start of that failed speed buff invade from Snadows. Nice secure there, by the way, for Daniel Perez, getting the big Harpy, and that the Elder Harpy is without a doubt the most important one, gives you the most experience out of that camp, but I really like that Snadows still looked to contest there. Maybe kind of figuring that Sternhawk would look for that cooldown boot strat, so knowing that he would have time to apply pressure, but it did delay the jungle clearing for Daniel Perez. So even though he didn't get the buff, which would have ultimately been the best case scenario, I still think that slowing down Daniel Perez's normal farming is a good look for the team.
Definitely. It doesn't end up getting him a whole lot, but it doesn't really cost him a whole lot either, so just the early teleport. And that does actually slow down the Glad Shield rush, if that's the direction he's planning on going, and we see that a lot from solo laners, just sitting in lane until they get up to that 1050 mark in hand, and then they teleport back right away and buy it, but maybe Snadows going to stick around for boots in this sort of option. Shaolin's pretty poked out and blue buff spawning. Shaolin might, yeah, he's just giving up that blue buff entirely to Snadows. So even despite the early teleport usage by the Achilles, he's getting the pressure in that lane.
Shaolin just a little bit too poked out. I think Snadows knows it, so he'll be more than happy. But this also means that Snadows is probably going to level 5 first, but right now it's all about Privative just trying to get out. Thorwall going to be off the mark. Privative is still just relying on this dodgy movement speed to keep him safe and sound. The big thing here, though, is that Daniel Perez eventually should have the cooldowns necessary, and that with one Berserker's Barrage, that's going to be the end of it.
Good interrupt, though, and now Daniel Perez gets crippled. The beads were a little bit too late. Now he's completely out of mana and completely dead to rights. Beautifully done by Xerxes, and Houseplant might be following, but watch out, Sternhawk over the wall. Good knockup with Argus, and that's enough to send the rest of Big Money Esports back, at least for the moment, but Xerxes telling his team, keep on it. Houseplant out of mana, and Xerxes and the rest of Big Money Esports get the kill onto Houseplant. Xerxes was a huge deal on this RDO in Game 1, Taco, and it feels to me like he's doing much of the same here in Game 2.
Xerxes just understands what he can and can't get away with. I think most RDOs would have probably looked to just started disengaging by there, assuming the Houseplant was going to get out, but Xerxes just kept going. That Bacchus just did not have the mana to prevent the future chase, just like Shaolin doesn't have the mana to try and look for this invade against Snadows. But Fatal Strike a little bit too soon.
Just a few health points too early, and now will they have the damage? Stun should be there, and that will be enough damage to bring down Shaolin. Good idea that he goes up-down with the Lord of the Afterlife, because in the solo laner contract, you have to up-down at every given opportunity. That's what they all do.
You only up-down, actually.
Right. You actually disable the Y-axis and only get to up-down. But in all seriousness, if he connects with Lord of the Afterlife in that position, he probably does kill Snadows, but Snadows really plays around his enemy's options at that point. That, okay, this is the only way that we can lose this kill is if I end up dying too early, so let me just sidestep out of range, and being a solo laner, he knows the up-down's coming.
The Snadows sidestep? I can't even say that. It's like an actual tongue twister. Say that real quick.
I cannot. I really don't even want to try. The Snadows snide step.
It's a thing.
I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about it at all. Now he's on the enemy blue buff yet again. This time around, looks like he was unsuccessful in stealing it, but successful in poking out the opposition. Thor's up. Looking at this red buff invade. Conviction playing it safe. This is pretty far, and I think Daniel Perez was a little bit out of range, but remember, no beads on this Thor. Privative has the ultimate, but the ultimate from Nano is going straight for Mystic Salmon. Paolau's there. Daniel Perez is a prime target, but won't get pulled in. Mystic Salmon, on the other hand, not quite as lucky. Xerxes getting low as well, but he's going to find an escape towards the south, but a nice hammer from Daniel Perez will clean up the enemy support, but it costs him his life in the process. The level 4 Bacchus for Houseplant still in trouble as well, but belly flop up and over the wall. Good timing for Privative. He gets the red buff, and speaking of timing, Doug's on it. Right side as soon as Snadows hits that fatal strike.
Ouch. I think that one big thing Benedicts are forgetting about that Big Money were always on top of in Game 1, you've got to make sure, if you want those buff invades, that you are certain to either confirm the buff and get out safely, or certain that you can find the kills after the fact. And the problem here is that Benedicts Cvlry are just openly aggressing into Big Money eSports, and they're telegraphing it the whole way through. So Big Money, they're able to respond in time. They've already had, on multiple instances, their teammates in position to collapse on top of Benedicts, and that's why we're seeing such steep punishment against them every single time they look for those buff invades.
7-2 is the lead for Big Money eSports, and in a pretty good spot in both gold and experience, over 1,500 in each way. And this is the biggest difference to me, is that in Game 1, Shaolin and Snadows were very, very close in farm. It was the Guan Yu and the Bakasura both kind of doing their own thing, and Shaolin was able to come in and be a saving grace almost for Benedicts Cvlry, at least for a while. Not the case this game. Snadows has quite a bit of pressure, but now he's under some siege as a gank from Daniel Perez, body blocked perfectly, no fatal strike for him, and Privative gets in there, but not before Snadows ends up falling. Daniel Perez might be dead to the dot. No, I think he's up. Well, I know he's up in the ultimate, but I think he's still alive for the moment, but up and over the wall. Can he see him? One more shot from the chain. No, he's going to pull in the support. Instead, right in the line of fire.
Oh, no.
For Nano adaptation. Daniel Perez shows his face and gets punished for it summarily. Houseplant's looking to finish off Privative, and he'll do it with the belch, but Xerxes not letting this support get away with that for free.
Just enough mana. Nice Discordia over the wall, but Xerxes actually going to end up dying to this T1 tower. Of course, a little bit of assistance there from Sternhawk, going to make sure to confirm the kill. Good body blocks out of Argus.
Very good body blocks. He's a good boy, Argus is, and ends up helping out. But man, what a good ultimate from Privative. If only he could have found a chain onto Daniel Perez over the wall, he wouldn't have had to overcommit later on for it. Speaking of overcommit, a fatal strike underneath the tier 2 by Snadows, which doesn't hit the mark. Luckily for him, Polymorph is right behind it. Might be able to walk out of here, but he'll take some health for it. Conviction similarly under siege on the left.
I still have to draw things back, though. I think that Nano had the Unruly Magic on cooldown, but Daniel Perez forced a hammer away. Daniel Perez also should have just left.
Yes.
When he got out 10% health, he had, I think, enough time to back and make it back into that engagement with how long Big Money stuck around the blue buff. That I think that could have been an even better counter-initiation situation for Benedicts Cvlry. But, you know, you win some, you lose some.
Can't win them all. That's what I always say. Shaolin's not getting out of this one. Daniel Perez was in the sky, though. You almost got out of that one, I suppose. Snadows in trouble, but no teleport in from Daniel Perez. Thought he might full commit towards that hammer teleport. Snadows didn't go for Glad Shield. He went for Berserker's Shield. What are your thoughts on the more auto-attack focused item on Achilles, who's got good auto attacks, but isn't going to be cleaving like Osiris?
He's looking to brawl. I think he really just wanted to match the sustain that he knew Shaolin would have with the Berserker's Shield, that he felt it necessary to go for one of his own. And I almost can't blame him, because we have seen him spamming his autos more often, I think, due to that.
Yeah, but the CDR from Glad Shield, and you're never going to match the sustain of ShaolinSSinS Glad Shield, because Gladiator Shield isn't a percentage of your damage, it's a percentage of your health that you're getting back per auto. And Osiris has a fast auto chain, whereas Achilles does not.
Yeah, see, you're making some really good points, aggro, but all I'm seeing right now is Shaolin at 0-4. My man Snadows rocking the 2-1-1.
Ah, okay. So
if it works, that must mean it's clearly the best case scenario.
Right. I too am a fan of results-based thinking. That is also very. It's a good way to think about how to improve for sure. Blue buff invade on the table, but Daniel Perez there a little bit too quickly. Snadows has definitely been putting in work, and now he's going for the shillelagh on the next item.
You just wanted to say that.
I sure did, and I did it. That's the great thing about this job, Taco. If I want to say something, I just can't, because that's my whole job is just saying stuff.
Kind of just like how Berserker Shield clearly superior to Glass Shield Achilles.
Well, in some ways. Privative's got to use that ultimate. There's a big fight breaking out around this red buff. Argus kind of stuck on that pillar, but so is Privative. He's stuck now in a bad spot, but a great stun prevents the teleport from Daniel Perez. Houseplant pretty isolated, but a good Intoxicate hits 3. Plenty of damage, but now he's going to receive some as well. Bleed and damage from Conviction, good enough. Is Argus doing what he can. Apple does not land. Hammer doesn't either. Is a quick beads from Nano. Gets him out of the double tap range. And a red buff successfully stripped by Big Money Esports. Cost them quite a bit in terms of relics and ultimates, but they also got a kill on the Houseplant.
That just felt so haphazard the entire way through, though, from both teams as well. I don't think that it was really exclusive to the Benedicts or Big Money, but the target focus just seemed all over the place, especially from Benedicts Cvlry. I think that Daniel Perez was for sure having some difficulties on deciding who to commit to, and that in turn kind of caused a lot of confusion for Sternhawk, which just leaves Argus rolling around doing a whole lot of nothing. But fortunately enough, Big Money Esports all decided to do the same back at the same exact time. Those confidence backs, man, they are definitely coming back to haunt them.
And a good identification by Benedicts Cvlry that the door was wide open for a Gold Fury. That puts this lead back to nearly 0 in gold. XP is still in favor of Big Money by almost now 3,000. That's bigger than I thought it was. Seems pretty spread out, except for the solo lane, of course, where Snadows is really giving Shaolin the work. But gold now, only about 1,000. Daniel Perez has to use the ultimate. Again, set off by Xerxes. Perez looking for Nano, but quick jukes puts him out of range, whereas Privative up on an ultimate of his own, trying to find a target. He'll find Shaolin and pull him in. Is there enough follow-up here, though? Whoa, weird angle from ShaolinSSinS, and he's going to pay for that one. It costs some more ultimates than it probably should have, but Shaolin does fall to Xerxes. Maybe he should re-enable the Y-axis. I know he up-downed earlier, but still doesn't seem to be quite working properly. Conviction, the solo invade, he's going to need to get on the horse pretty soon.
I think he just needs to keep on running in this instance. Going to be able to avoid the knockup. Nice job so far. I mean, Xerxes going to body block him anyway. But there's just not really much more of a threat against Conviction here. But there's plenty of a threat.
Xerxes still up, but Snadows trying to win the 2v3. Sternhawk's able to escape. Good healing coming from that Radiant Glory that Snadows has, of course. He's out healing Argus and Thor and Bacchus and the Kernanos, and he's out of there. Level 14 gets you to do things like that. By the way, while that fight was happening, Big Money got a Pyromancer, so more objective gold going their way. Conviction baited his team into an awkward fight, but guess there was no harm done.
Big Money needed to confirm that Pyromancer, though, after losing the Gold Fury because they got caught sleeping, honestly. But taking things all the way back to the very start of that fight where Daniel Perez overshot the Thorold, I think he should have just started going into the jungle from Big Money Esports there. He saw where everyone was at on the map. He knew that the majority of Big Money Esports was already looking for the invade on his blue buff, but Conviction will not be able to get this out this time around. Daniel Perez has finally connected.
No hammer for him, though, and is now in a decent amount of trouble. Howlow hits. That'll force beads from 1, beads from 2. That's good enough from Privative. Sometimes that's all you need.
Oh, it almost wasn't enough. Privative would have definitely dove that tower.
And he definitely would have died. Well, maybe not. I guess if he immediately starts 1,000 cuts his way out, maybe he could have lived.
But there's also enough mana from Perez, I think, to look for the Thor stun.
Yeah, then he's dead. Then he's definitely dead if he walls him in. So maybe a gift given to Privative by Daniel Perez to stick the back.
But Again, for Perez, I want to see him going into Big Money's jungle more often because Big Money has spent so much time diving deeply into Benedict's Cvlrys that they have not really been getting their buff timers on the timer, or at least not the normal ones. They've got some kind of janky buff timers right now because they spent so much time looking for those invades, and I think that Daniel Perez can made up for a lot of farm there.
Lots of damage committed, I should say, onto Xerxes, but still okay. Argus going to chase him, but I don't think he'll be able to finish him. Meanwhile, Sternhawk getting finished in the mid lane. Snadows with the Thorns. Good turnaround from Sternhawk. No way he gets out of that. They're just too distracted by the rest of the team. No one's looking at the mid mage. Nano lets him walk away, and Sternhawk is indeed out of there. Shaolin, a big Lord of the Afterlife, but immediately eats a stun for his troubles. I believe that was an Aegis he just had to use in order to stay alive. So it's a 1-for-1 ADC for jungler. That's crazy that it was only a 1-for-1. Specifically, that Sternhawk survived in this a weird item selection that I was gonna bring up before this, but it ends up paying off here. It's a winged blade for Sternhawk. Gives him enough HP and movement speed in order to live.
He knew exactly who would be chasing him at this point. And
But Snadows doesn't even have a slow.
it doesn't matter. He's got that health, and he's got the slow if need be. The Wingblade proc is there to proc just in case. The only real slow, though, that I think he'll ever have to worry about is Convictions, because I feel like maybe Privative
Dodgy
as
has
well.
a slow, yeah, on the 1, but if she's already on top of you, I don't know if you're getting away because of that.
That was kind of my mindset as well.
Yeah, it just feels like a weird item selection. I don't know. I understand wanting some health for pretty cheap, and Wingblade definitely does that, but maybe a Dynasty Plate Helm is better in that position. Much better at getting you to survive against Snadows most of the time, though. I guess I have to eat my words after that tier 1 juke. Gold Fury's back up. This time it's a Primal Fury, and, well, Benedicts Cvlry should know what's up. Now they know it's down after they hear the noise. Speaking of up, Privative's up on the Powwow. Houseplant coming right back to you. Good stun, though, coming, and now there's a really good area for Privative to get blown up by Mystic Salmon. He's got to use the Purification Beads after the fact, but the damage is already done. Daniel Perez up in the sky. He dunks on the wrong target. Conviction was low, but there was a double dunk waiting for him. Now Conviction jukes himself to death as Nano goes right back in, and 3 in a row now for Daniel Perez. Xerxes falls to Sternhawk 2-7-2, and Snadows is left picking up the scraps. He's the only one left alive on Big Money Esports.
Daniel Perez exhibiting the classic zoning ultimate there with Thor, and it works. If it works,
Somehow.
it works. 4 members dead from Big Money Esports now. Opens up the doorway for Benedict to take this T1 tower for free, and more importantly, this could be a full-on Hail Mary call from Benedicts Cvlry, but it might just be the call they need to bring them into a guaranteed lead for this game.
This is spooky to me, though, Taco. A level 17 Achilles is still here, and look at that CC chain. Never mind, there is no Achilles here. Please go on with your business, which is getting this Fire Giant. ShaolinSSinS needs to be a little bit careful. He might die. He took another shot, so that's why he'll see him back up. And Benedicts Cvlry will go back to base with 5 people strong with the Fire Giant.
But all of that could have probably been prevented if Big Money Esports just took a second to realize you don't always have to be that deep for zone duty. I think the problem here for these last couple of engagements is that Privative and Snadows seem to have a mind of their own, and they haven't really been working together either. They've both been individually attacking one or more members from Benedict's backline, and that's giving ample time for Benedicts to just 5v1 or 5v2 collapse, which is way too much for even a Dodgy and Achilles with being level 17. So's Mystic Salmon. Well, more so now. Mystic Salmon is caught up to where Snadows is at, but the point still stands. I just think that Big Money Esports are spreading their forces way too thin, and that's making a lot of these team fights afterwards incredibly awkward.
Definitely. I mean, you don't need to be zoning by red entrance when you're doing a Gold Fury. I mean, that Gold Fury was absolutely free for Big Money Esports until it was an overextension by Privative and Snadows and Xerxes to get up there and really force their damage dealers into a bad spot. Now they're paying for it. They lose the Fire Giant. Pyromancer could be next, though Xerxes with that ward has knowledge that this is going on. He's got some help coming in the form of Nano, and Snadow could come in through that top side, but Benedicts Cvlry, just seeing one member is enough to spook them away from the objective.
Benedicts Cvlry, though, they're all grouped up closer to the Pyromancer. Privative, though, in a world of trouble here against Daniel Perez. Might be forced out of the powwow a little bit early on, trying to wait out the duration of the Thor ultimate, but I don't think Daniel Perez is really willing to let this kill go just yet.
No, as he should not be. That is an option that he could have gone in on, but with Conviction over there on the left-hand side. That was Privative's beads, though, and Daniel Perez only had to use the ultimate. They both have a decent amount of CDR, but they have the same amount of CDR, but still could favor that Thor. Xerxes is now a boar instead of a bear, and they're close in both killability and survivability, and in how they sound. He's alive. That's where I was going with that.
Benedicts just need to play Protect Mystic Salmon right now. I think that Sternhawk's got enough self-peel that they should be A-okay, but I definitely do not think that this is going to be a super strong push from, or push back from Big Money Esports, I should say.
Tier 1 tower on the right-hand side falls to the siege from Benedict Cvlry. 4 members here from Big Money to try and defend. Make that 5 as Conviction shows up coming from base. He's working on some chin size, but his Executioner and his Ichabod are already done. He's actually a little bit ahead of where Mystic Salmon is on the build, his Balanced Blade in comparison to the Light Blade. Privative probably not going to win this trade, not without his Purification beads. Daniel Perez again used the ultimate early on. Privative trying to stay a little bit more patient this time. Daniel Perez going to miss, and now it's up into Privative's ultimate in the mid lane. But on the right-hand side, there's a bigger fight going on as a 4v4. That apple going to spread to multiple different members. Shaolin couldn't get away from the rest of his team. And this Osiris gets low, but not so low that he can't continue the fight. Xerxes, on the other hand, has to head back to base.
The tower still stands, and as long as that T2 tower stands, that's just time that's ticking off away from this Fire Giant buff that Benedicts Cvlry have been trying to use to their advantage. This is a really good defense so far from Big Money Esports.
Nano very low on mana. Benedicts Cvlry still not looking to push it. They know that Daniel doesn't have his ultimate in mid lane anymore. He's backing up a little bit. They decide to lay off the gas. I feel like that was a good time to keep going, though, Taco. When you see the enemy mid has no mana at all, that's a good time to fight.
You usually want to keep pushing in, but I think that Benedicts Cvlry just might not have felt like they were healthy enough to continue that siege. Really concerned that if they get turntable wiped there, well, who's left to play defense for their own towers?
Oni Fury, the next objective to fight over for these two teams. There's already been a Primal Fury. That went the way of Big Money Esports, so keep that in mind if they are to pull a Fire Giant or attempt to steal one later on. They'll be doing 5% more. Privative trying to do a lot more. We'll see if he's actually successful. Daniel Perez also up in the sky. Pull in on Shaolin is dunked down straight onto Privative. Wild Hunt's there as well, and Houseplant sends him packing with the last drink of wine. Daniel Perez exits to the north. Snadows exits into the ground. Mystic Salmon gets kill number 14 for Benedicts Cvlry. And that Oni Fury's looking mighty fine now for Benedicts Cvlry. Is no way the 3 remaining members of Big Money Esports step up to help. But Taco, Conviction and Nano, the 2 damage dealers, take 0 points of damage. Neither use an ultimate, neither use a relic. Is that on them to be stepping up, or do you think that the rest of the team was too far forward?
I think that Privative is just way too far out there. He's just in no man's land. There's not really an opportunity, I don't think, for this Discordia to get in range to cast Strife or Unruly Magic. I mean, Conviction, sure, he's got the mounted archery, and that can kind of close the gap more often than not, but he shouldn't have to charge in with that ultimate. There should just be a better setup surrounding for it, I think, as a finisher or even a soft initiator. But with the jungle fights being so cut off and narrow with a lot of those corridors, I definitely would not want to mounted archery into the Gold Fury section. I just think that Privative and Snadows, again, just need to draw things back a bit. They just need to tone it down.
The Pele definitely seemed a lot more in control than this Dodgy so far for Privative. We'll see if he's able to turn it around in the later stages. But for now, they have to be worried about getting to the later stages. Benedicts Cvlry is up by a considerable amount of gold at this point. Over 6,000 experience, pretty close to it as well. A big swing. I mean, that's a 10,000 experience difference from 13, 14 minutes into the game, because Big Money was up 5K experience, and now those tables have indeed turned. Fire Giant now enhanced as we've turned past 25 minutes. Can Big Money actually contest a Fire Giant here?
They could. They definitely could with their current composition. I think that there's actually multiple ways for Big Money. One thing I want to see Privative use the powwow, but to bait out actives, because I don't think that it's really going to be up to this Daji as like the heavy CCing factor here so much as it's going to be just Xerxes and Snadows after the fact corralling everybody together into the same area. That way Nano and Conviction can finally have a chance to put out some damage.
It's funny that in the last game, Shaolin was the only one doing anything positive for Benedicts Cvlry, and in this game, everyone else is looking really good, and my man's still 0-5 in level 18, 26 minutes in. A different, definitely a different look for the solo laner. Not the look. If Shaolin was playing as well as he did in game 1, Benedicts Cvlry would be stomping this game. Not that they aren't in commanding position already.
I think he's still putting in some pretty decent work, though, on the Osiris, but I am right there with you. It definitely seems like the Guan Yu might be a little bit more his forte than the Osiris, but hey, sometimes you just gotta deal the hand you're given, and right now, Shaolin putting in as much work as possible to get the full utility out of this Osiris selection.
Tier 2 tower was weak, so Benedicts Cvlry come in, knock it down very easily. That's 1,500 gold across the team. Xerxes pretty far forward now, and he's going to need some help. Polymorph's there, as is Argus's knockup, and Shaolin's not going to let this chase go. Houseplant also looking for a little bit more, but that Intoxicate gets very little this time around. Watch out for Daniel Perez, though. He's on the left side. He's now up, but he's too far to affect this fight from this position, but everyone is funneling back towards the Thor, knowingly or not. Apple goes on to Shaolin. He's got the Aegis to stop that burst damage. Conviction needs his own Aegis to stop the burst damage from Daniel, but Mystic Salmon's the first one out. Privative gets that kill. Fatal Strike a bit too early, but ShaolinSSinS still very, very low. Daniel gonna jump in to the middle of the fray, but Privative can't do enough to bring him down. Snadows, on the other hand, does enough to take down ShaolinSSinS, and Daniel somehow manages to escape. The rest of his team trying to do the same.
It's probably going to be toast for Houseplant. That belch just got interrupted. Conviction looking for the Aijutsu, but won't find the stun.
Nice.
Unruly magic over the wall, though. Sure enough, will. And Houseplant is going to be sent right back to the fountain with the rest of, or at least with the other two members from his team, ShaolinSSinS and Mystic Salmon. And this could be a big power play moment now for Benedicts. There's still 20 seconds till Mystic responds. Same thing for Shaolin. And Houseplant on 30. I think they definitely have enough time to base buy and then look to pull this Fire Giant, or at least look to bait Benedicts Cvlry in and force them into position where they can't disengage so that you continue to stagger death timers.
They don't have the time for Conviction to go and get back camps on the left-hand side or get red buff. I mean, this is, you're losing your power play opportunity. Mystic Salmon's already respawned, Shaolin has already respawned.
Wait.
And that's it. That's all. They're getting nothing off the back of this. I agree with you that they needed to back. Privative was very low. They needed to back right there. But if you stick to back and then really book it right towards Fire Giant, you're in a much better spot than just getting 3 kills and then saying, "Hey guys, good job." That's your reward.
This is one of those situations, though, where I think the inexperience from competitive levels really starts to shine through here, because I think some of the more seasoned console teams definitely look to make that a power play moment. But Conviction and friends, I think, still waiting for their next opportunity. That might be the Gold Fury.
Privative again, up into the powwow, looking to play aggressive, pulls in Mystic Salmon, and he got caught right on the hook. Conviction's able to get that kill. Daniel Perez is up, probably looking for Conviction, who still has no relics, but instead he'll find Nano. Still a pretty good target. Intoxicate was there as well from Mystic Salmon, but Daniel Perez uses the hammer aggressively, now heading right into the waiting clutches of Conviction, and he makes him pay. Mounted archery is good to put some damage on the Houseplant, and the frontliner just getting absolutely shredded. Fatal Strike lands for Snadows, and now he's got a second target lined up, but Nano's going to claim that one for himself. This time, there should be no choice but to go and get the Fire Giant. That's 2 fights back-to-back that Big Money Esports win. Privative did not get the objective memo, apparently.
Privative just better hope that he can even survive right now. Hera's got some pretty crazy movement speed in her third ability, but fortunately enough, Privative, Sternhawk, not really wanting to worry about giving chase here, rather spend his time preventing Snadows from getting a free T2 tower while his team undoubtedly secures the Fire Giant.
Definitely a good idea by Snadows, but well executed on the defense by Sternhawk. Definitely don't need anybody else on this Fire Giant. That's going down without much of a problem. So may as well get some farm in the mid lane, maybe get a tower, but that will have to wait for another day. So Big Money Esports wins 2 fights back-to-back. What's been going wrong now for Benedict Cvlry that they lost these last 2 fights?
I honestly just think that they started copying Big Money Esports for no reason whatsoever. The target focus selection has just been awful, honestly, from Benedicts. Well, that very last team fight around the Gold Fury, I think that was just an instance of Mystic Salmon just pops like a balloon, and that was kind of just the 4v5. We're just going to smother you now from Big Money Esports, which was the right call. But the fights leading up to that engagement, I just feel like Benedicts Cvlry have really been isolating their carries far too often. I mean, Mystic Salmon, at one point, I believe we saw him dancing around inside of a blue buff for an eternity. And while I believe Houseplant was trying to provide him some assistance, Sternhawk and Daniel Perez, I mean, they're kind of just out doing their own thing. And I just don't really think that Shaolin and Houseplant have been able to coordinate with each other as well as they probably would have liked to, and that's largely due to the fact that their carries just keep running in all sorts of different directions.
That definitely needs to be remedied. We're going to see a adjustment as well as Big Money has adjusted in this game. Quite the back and forth. Gold now even between the two, but pressure certainly in favor of Big Money Esports. They've got enhanced Fire Giant on all 5 members, and look at how much damage it's doing to this tower. Conviction has to use the beads in a spot he probably didn't want to, and he gets his dash caught on the knockup. Shaolin able to put him down. Lord of the Afterlife knocks him right off the horse, and now Shaolin's looking for a little bit more. Daniel Perez is up, and he'll find Nano beautifully with that Anvil of Dawn. Heal is good from Xerxes, but not good enough. Nano falls to the hammer of Daniel Perez. Xerxes, just a formality. Mystic Salmon cleans him up, and just like that, 3-0. They lost the Phoenix, but end up winning the fight. Was Privative there at all, Taco? Or did he back right away? How did he already get all the way over to the right side?
I don't even think he was there. I think he might have just been forced out super early.
Did he back to defend the split push from Daniel Perez?
I think he might have made the mistake of backing to defend split push over just staying grouped with his team, and now that's going to give Benedicts Cvlry an opportunity to look towards this mid lane Phoenix with 3 members from Big Money Esports still dead for a little bit longer. Pao Lao up in the air, has 2, but just not going to find anybody.
Got the beads, though, from Mystic Salmon. Snadows was keeping Sternhawk busy in the mid lane, but eventually mid Phoenix does fall. 2 members with enhanced Fire Giant left. It's Snadows and Privative, the 2 on your screen. They don't want to give up the chase, though. That might be the wiser call. Shaolin still very healthy, could frontline pretty easily for his team, and without a stun, I don't think they've got the damage to kill him. Mystic Salmon has no beads, and that might be why they're trying to keep him here, wait until someone can CC him, but the rest of the team very far behind, Taco.
Still only halfway. Snadows just looking to get damage out, I think, on Sternhawk underneath that T2 tower. Maybe force him into believing that there's going to be more follow-up to come, although if I'm Sternhawk and I know that 3 of your teammates just recently respawned, they're not going to be anywhere near me in this mid lane. But Big Money Esports still charging down mid regardless. They will be successful in tripping down that T2 tower. Only 1 more still standing now for Benedicts on the furthest lane, that solo lane side. But more importantly, it's just it's crazy to me how back and forth these fights are as soon as 1 member dies. Because in that last engagement, in that left side Phoenix attempt, I mean, Big Money Esports, they get what they were after. They find the Phoenix, awesome. But Conviction, I think, a little bit too selfish about wanting to use that mounted archery as an escape. Probably expecting that the Aijutsu would be enough to create enough distance, but Houseplant's reaction time was just beautiful.
Really well done by the entirety of Benedicts Cvlry on that left side Phoenix defense, though. They didn't get the bird up, and they still were able to get some kills. I love that Privative and Snadows don't let anybody back, though, from Benedicts Cvlry right after that fight begins, because that's what allows there's some buff invades, they strip away red and speed, they get the tier 2 in mid, they get the tier 2 in the right, and that's all because Privative and Snadows don't let the entirety of Benedicts Cvlry back and heal in time for a defense.
But now there's a lot more on the line surrounding this next Fire Giant, because not only is it another enhanced Fire Giant aggro, but you've also got the concern of both of these teams have openings towards wins. And so if a team wipe is successful in either direction, this is anybody's game now.
And there's positives and negatives for both sides. The positive for Big Money Esports is that the left side Phoenix is a much better one to have in this situation, because it's so much harder to defend those fire waves without giving up positional advantage on the Fire Giant. But the good news for Benedicts Cvlry is that they got their Phoenix more recently. So if this siege becomes more extended, if this dance takes a while, then their Phoenix will get more worth out of it. We'll see if that comes into play. Privative has started every fight off just like this. Early ultimates. And he got beads this time from SternHawk, so not a complete waste.
This is my favorite one so far, though, from Privative, just because of the fact that that left side Phoenix is so due to respawn that Big Money Esports are aware it's most likely Daniel Perez, because he's been the sole split-pushing member so far for Benedicts Cvlry, so what's going to stop him now? And that's exactly why we see this Thor on the opposite side of the map from where everybody else is gathered, just looking to kill these last few fire minions, because just like you just mentioned, that left side Phoenix, it's already respawned. Meanwhile, Big Money Esports still have a little bit longer to go until their Firebird is back up and running.
Doesn't seem to be a lot of pep in the step of Big Money Esports. Not a lot of urgency for them.
It felt like it was going to be way more urgent.
Yeah,
Privative like goes in.
Look at how far Daniel Perez is, and they're just allowing him to push that entire left side. I believe they have a Primal Fury buff on them, so that's at least 5% more damage on the Enhanced Fire Giant. I get it's scary, but you're letting Daniel Perez strip away your advantage really easily. Now there's a teleport from Snadows, and that means that it can just be go time for Benedicts Cvlry.
I would much rather hold on to that teleport and just force a fight instead, but I think that Big Money, maybe they were waiting to get their own Phoenix back up, because Mid Phoenix has now freshly respawned. Only thing left to clear out is a few of the creep waves, but it was definitely misleading from Privative there, at least from what I was watching. I mean, I thought that you see a powwow, it's like go time for the rest of the team. You force out the Hera beads, but nah, instead we're just going to have Snadows teleport over to the opposite side of the map and defend a pushing Thor.
And now you have to play aggressively in the next 50 seconds. Daniel Perez did just use his hammer. He'll lose his Magi's Cloak as well. Snadows gets to play pretty aggressive and take a chunk off the enemy jungler. You have to take advantage of the fact that SternHawk's beads are down in the next 40 seconds. That's not a lot of time. And hopefully they, Big Money Esports, are on their relic timers. So they're going to need them. This is the best opportunity to really punish SternHawk, but seconds keep ticking by, Taco, and SternHawk's not even that close, and Privative is nowhere close. I mean, do oracles matter in this position?
No. I think Privative is just looking for farm, though. Maybe just trying to get farm to get 6 items slotted. Oh, no, never mind. Yeah, he already sold those.
A lot of people already with their elixirs of speed. Snadows.
3Ks.
Privatives. Yeah, 3K is definitely going to be necessary at some point, but Conviction also with that elixir of speed done, whereas Mystic Salmon still with boots in inventory. Privative is going to go aggressive. SternHawk's beads are back up. Mystic Salmon's beads now down. Pull in on a ShaolinSSinS. Strife is there. Not a lot of damage after the fact, though. Shaolin still up and pretty healthy at that. Everyone funneling in this corridor. Nice apple, but it's onto the wrong target. Houseplant can afford to take that blow. Now, Nano's going to turn his attention towards the right-hand side onto SternHawk, but Shaolin still stands on that mid-Phoenix. Very low, but stands nonetheless. Great Strife forces Aegis from 2 members of the enemy team, and Snadows not letting the fight go quite yet. Argus is still here, as is SternHawk, but Big Money now looking more for the objective than the kills.
There's creeps in the way, though, and Conviction has not had an easy time trying to bring down this Phoenix, but they will finally be successful here for Big Money Esports, but at what cost? Xerxes already fallen. Snadows looking very likely to be next. He's already been slowed down by this Osiris.
Nice Strife. I think that's enough. I think he's out of there now unless he turns. Don't do that. Keep
going.
Gonna
turn back around.
Oh, that gave me anxiety. Okay, we're back. Everything's fine. Snadows is still alive. Mid laner and mid Phoenix for your support. An absolute win for Big Money Esports. Well, I guess Benedicts Cvlry is getting a near irrelevant Gold Fury, but certainly in the favor of the Order side. Fire Giant still standing. Xerxes on a slightly longer respawn timer than Sternhawk, but I don't think that'll come into play.
Sometimes I feel like when I'm getting a 40-minute Gold Fury at least.
Yeah.
And only when, like those few games that actually do manage to climb this deep. But you kind of just take something because it's there. I think that's what Gold Fury becomes for a lot of teams after the fact, because it just feels nice. It keeps your team in like somewhat decent morale, I feel, because that was a fairly one-sided team fight from Big Money. And I think that the other big thing to consider if you're on Benedicts Cvlry is just look at the way that they're choosing to disengage. I think that was really smart peel across the board from all of Benedicts Cvlry's members. While it wasn't necessarily ideal to lose the mid lane Phoenix, that could have been a potential game ender right there.
Had that feel to it, didn't it? Big Money couldn't quite close it out, though. And now they're looking for the actual game ender. Instead of going for Fire Giant, Taco, they're still pushing here.
Don't ask me why, aggro. I can't tell you. From no amount of analysis in the world is going to be able to explain this one. Sometimes I honestly
are so scared of enhanced fire.
They are. These guys are just scared, and they're hesitating, and they're not just scared of the enhanced fire giant, but I think that they're also scared of it being stolen, or they're scared of Benedict's Cvlry wiping them while they're trying to take it. So they'd rather just try to push on this right-hand Phoenix, but without that enhanced fire giant, I just don't think that Benedict's Cvlry is really going to budge here.
Look at how far back all of Benedict's Cvlry are. I mean, they've got no shot at getting to a fire giant if you keep them here. But no attempts quite yet. It's more focus on this Phoenix.
The other problem too, though, is that I do think that Big Money Esports would need to be all grouped up, because they got a Primal Fury, and that's nice for helping you bring down objectives, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee the objective, especially since Conviction isn't running a crit-based build, neither is Mystic Salmon, so it is a group effort needed. And Conviction, this is also, it feels like the wrong choice for me if I'm Big Money Esports. Your Hunter should never be the one being sent to defend when there's a Fire Giant on the map for debate.
Daniel Perez is up, and Conviction's dash down. But Daniel Perez is so far, I don't think he can reach from this angle. No, he's going to go straight back down, but I think Snadows was close enough to hear that ultimate is now on cooldown. That's a big deal. We'll see if it's a big enough deal to get Big Money Esports to get over their Fire Giant phobia.
The problem is both of these teams are grouped up. The way that they're fighting and the way that they're grouping,
wow,
it feels like we're 10 minutes in instead of 42, almost 43.
Houseplant uses the sprint there, really scared of the damage going on Shaolin. And would you look at this? The Mad Men are actually going to try it.
Without their Hunter, though, and they're pulling it.
I mean, look at how far back everyone from Benedict's Cvlry is. It doesn't matter. Now that ShaolinSSinS shows up, it's time to drop it, but you force a teleport. That's already a win. Xerxes taking a decent amount of damage, though. Shaolin still pushing forward. Strife is there. Decent damage from Unruly Magic as well. Chain onto one. Daniel Perez going to start channeling Anvil of Dawn. Mystic Salmon uses the Purification Beads, or was that a Magi's Cloak? Either way, he's not stunned and pulled in. Xerxes, on the other hand, really far forward. Wild Hunt a little bit off the mark, though, and the bear looks like he might be able to escape. Daniel Perez eats the apple, but is still standing. Shaolin has an Aegis, but he was still fine regardless. Mounted Archery gets fired off. Privative now in. This is a... What is going on?
It's so spread out.
What is going on?
It is so all over the place from both of these teams. The big thing I was seeing too, Daniel Perez, that Thor wall cut off his team from chasing Xerxes, and now Shaolin might get caught out. Privative blinking over the wall incredibly deep into that of Benedict's. Argus still standing though, and a massive Intoxicate until Daniel Perez finally finds the first victim here with a double tap.
And then there were 9. There's still a lot of book to go. I mean,
Everybody's going to back. Everybody's going to back, and no one's going to do fire. I'm calling it now.
They could have still done fire in this position, Taco. I mean, yes, you lost a member, but it's your late game dodgy. You still have your Hunter. He's got his relics. He's full HP. You know the entirety of the enemy team has to back. You saw them backing. Or you didn't see them backing, but you saw them low health.
If we back too, and we're full health too?
Oh, word?
Yeah, think about that.
Okay. All right, I'm thinking about it, and I'm done thinking about it. I'd rather have the fire giant.
But look at it. Xerxes now at full health. can attack these back harpies like never before.
Oh, and Oni Fury is coming up, so I got to make sure we get this one.
Value. 45 minutes.
Now, I will say, late game Oni Fury's worth much more than late game Gold Fury's.
That's a 3K pot on the rise.
Well, it's not only that you get the gold, but if you don't defend the Oni waves, they will take a Phoenix.
Yes.
So they're kind of like fire minions in that way. And when all the waves are this far pushed up on Benedict Cavalry side of the map, that means it's going to take time for those enhanced waves to come down, which means that it's longer, that Big Money Esports needs to be around. And look, it's crazy to me that these teams don't want Fire Giant.
I need to know if Nano is really not having enough gold. Like, what is he buying last item as a mage? Maybe a rod?
Rod.
A Tahuti because that's a really expensive chunk of change.
33.
I mean, that's essentially a 3K pot.
Yes.
And some. So Nano,
Still has his boots.
the only one that still has his boots. Sternhawk traded his out a while ago for a little bit of a
Xerxes still has
different.
his, it looks like, and so does Shaolin. How does Shaolin still have boots?
I think
What are you? I mean, I guess what are you buying? But I feel like there's something that you could get instead of boots. I mean, the 40 power does next to nothing for you as an Osiris. Get a hide of the Nemean line. Get a Glad Shield. That does more for you at this point. It doesn't do a whole lot, but Void Shield would be great in this spot.
I'm trying to think of the best bang for your buck item here. I mean, I'd even like to see him with the Blackthorns.
Blackthorn
Blackthorns,
probably fun.
Runeforged Hammer. Can never really
I
go
don't know
wrong
if you
with
really want
Runeforged.
to play more into the Soul Reaver and Chin Size, though. I think more
True.
health might actually end up hurting you more than it helps you. Though he might already be at the cap of how effective those items are, so yeah, you could build more HP. You could build a Frostbound Hammer. I think Frostbound would probably be
Relic
pretty good.
Dagger? It's a little bit awkward,
Maybe. I don't think so.
you'd
I
be
don't think
surprised.
it's a good stat stick, but I really want it to at least help me with one of my relics consistently, and I don't think it helps him with either. Aegis being up every extra 30 seconds, he shouldn't need Aegis at this point of the game anyways. I think that's a wasted relic slot at this point. He just needed it because he was so far behind earlier.
You can't tell me this doesn't feel like the first 15 minutes of a Smite game right now.
Yeah, it does.
I feel like they've all gone back to laning phase.
What do we normally talk about during laning phase? Stacking items or something like that? Is anyone still stacking? Some Hide of the Urchins need stacking. Those don't get stacked by minions, but it's kind of similar. Sometimes we like go off on tangents during the laning phase, like I don't know. I talk about my weekend or something like that.
How was your weekend, by the way?
My weekend was pretty good. Had
Do
some
anything
friends come
fun?
in. Yeah, played some Smash Brothers, played some Smite. It was a good time. What about you? How was your weekend?
I had a pretty good one too. Yeah, I can't complain. I definitely.
Let me guess. You went to the gym.
How'd you know?
Because I know Privative is going up to the powwow as often as you're going to the gym. It's all day. Shaolin brought back in, has Lord of the Afterlife, but hasn't used it quite yet. Snadows all over Sternhawk all by himself, and Shaolin's Aegis is good, but it's spread to Mystic Salmon. He nearly dies, and Privative does bring him down with that dot. Nano able to knock down ShaolinSSinS as Sternhawk still on the run from Snadows. Fatal Strike's already on cooldown, but I don't think he'll need it. One more shot from Xerxes gets the job done. Privative lives with a sliver of HP. And what are we doing after winning a team fight, Taco? Back in.
Okay, in fairness, this is a minute of respawn. You have a full health Hunter. Please, I hate to say it, aggro. They could end the game here.
They could end the game
It's a Thor and a Bacchus. You take that mid-Phoenix.
So for all the complaining we have done about go to do the Fire Giant, this is where you don't do the
it.
Fire Giant.
You end the game.
You get your Phoenixes, you end the game. Whew, deep breaths, deep breaths. It's only week 3, Taco. We gotta
Imagine if
pace
it gets
ourselves.
stolen. You think there's a chance
Okay,
this
one of us
stolen?
gets to leave if this gets stolen. Who is it? Is it you or me? Rock, paper, scissors, real fast.
No, we both did scissors.
Oh no! Okay, Fire Giant goes down. Oh, that was close. Houseplant is here because he doesn't want to live anymore. But Daniel Perez with a huge dunk. Conviction uses both relics. Daniel Perez gonna die to the apple. He had his Aegis, but it doesn't matter. It's a full deicide, but only for a moment. ShaolinSSinS and Mystic Salmon both respawn. Sternhawk only 8 seconds behind. But now you've got 2 more people on a 70-second respawn, and you've got this enhanced Fire Giant. Right side Phoenix is the call. Shaolin looking at Conviction. He knows his relics are down, but Osiris can't do a whole lot about that. Privative doing what he can against Sternhawk and Mystic Salmon, but it's not a whole lot. He gets killed fairly easily, though it does cost them Argus, but Shaolin's right behind him.
3 members dead now for quite some time here. Mystic Salmon is going to make it back into the fountain, but they're looking for the game, man. Big Money eSports just not certain if they're going to be able to collapse entirely, but no, Snadows brings down Mystic Salmon, and I think that might just be enough, aggro.
That should be, unless Sternhawk really pops off here. It will not be enough. 28-20, Big Money eSports finally close it out in 50 minutes. Hard fought in that one, no doubt about it. Fire Giant went down and the game was over. That's crazy. I did not expect that.
I think the craziest, I can't help but laugh, man, but it's just like, all of that fighting, and then when they could have ended the game, they're like, okay, now we do the Fire Giant.
But that ended the game, Taco. They were clearly 10 steps ahead of us. A hard-fought victory for sure, but Benedicts Cvlry ends up just a little bit short. Let's throw it over to the desk for them to break down game 2.
We'll break it down, and you guys can take a quick break after the 50-minute slugfest. Some Galaxy Brain plays from both sides, but eventually we got the end there. Big Money eSports with a big fight around the Fire Giant, like you heard them allude to there at the end, and that opened up the door for them to go in and finally close it out.
That's what it all takes at the end of the day. You got to have that enhanced Fire Giant for the extra structure damage, making the Phoenix Siege just that much easier. Both teams hesitating for a long time about that objective, which makes sense. You know, it got buffed in Season 6. More protections, more health, especially once it ticks over to the hand side. Also more mechanics that you have to deal with. So if you're ever going to get it contested, it makes the call a little bit dicier.
Yeah, this was a tougher game for both sides this time. I think that Benedicts Cvlry played much better overall, totally, than what we saw from game 1, obviously, because the game went twice as long this time. It took a while for them to get this Osiris online, though, right? It felt like ShaolinSSinS was kind of holding them back a little bit towards the beginning of the game. They were relying a lot on Perez. Sternhawk was playing well to keep them relevant into the later portions of this game.
That's the problem with Osiris since its inception in Smite history. It has a good early to mid game, but if you don't transition that into Gold Furies, into Pyromancers, then why even pick it at the end of the day? And that's kind of what happened. Privative kind of leaned on this Osiris early, didn't allow it to pop off, allowed the Achilles actually that kind of luxury instead.
Yeah, Privative was the one on the other side that was causing them problems as the game started off. He slowed down a little bit, as dodgies tend to do as things get later, but his early game start in particular, getting up onto this pal-out, forcing out relics, being the one with that damage, it was causing so many problems for Benedicts Cvlry that they weren't able to really get to their even footing. But you can see, even 27 minutes into the game, it's not like this is a kill-heavy game, right?
Sure.
I mean, it was about a kill a minute or so, something like right around that mark.
And there was just a lot of aggression from not just him, but his other frontliners, right? You got the Achilles specifically coming out of Snadows, you know, Artio yet again coming out of Xerxes, doing a good job, limiting people's potential to escape. That crippled minefield really made it difficult for Daniel Perez on the Thor to escape on the hammer at times.
Right.
So I really like the late game composition from Big Money. The Discordia also, the Strife. It's so difficult playing around the Strife, whether you're aggressing towards the Phoenixes or having to defend your own.
She could be very difficult. That was, I think, Adaption playing on it this time. Maybe not quite as strong as we saw from him on the Agni, but still strong nonetheless. But that is going to do it for that set. Let's take a look at the standings so we can see where all those North American PlayStation 4 teams have rounded out at the end. We didn't see our top 2 teams here. Shrimp Gang and Cyclone were elsewhere. But Big Money, though, finally gets their first win, and Benedicts Cvlry, unfortunately, will still be in search of theirs. But they got plenty of time to find it and try and catch back up.
That's true. This is going to be a great start to something maybe better now for Big Money, transitioning into week number 4. Benedicts needs to kind of go through the learning curve now and figure out what didn't work in the first 3 weeks and make sure they change it up.
That's right. And when you have this kind of matchup, this is where your team is going, okay, where do we truly stand right now compared to everyone else? Are we that bottom team or not? They won it, so now they can feel pretty comfortable that they're not.
No, definitely not. And as we're approaching an end for the PlayStation side of things for week number 3, we're going to head over to the Xbox side.
That's right. We still have plenty more console action for you all to enjoy. We got a quick video for you all to enjoy as well, and we'll be right back.